Utility Authority meeting to order. We welcome you to the Lafayette Public Utility Authority's meeting. We, as your representatives, welcome your involvement and encourage your participation. This meeting is a public hearing. If you wish to address the council on any item on this agenda, please fill out a blue request to address the council form, noting the agenda item. The blue form is available to you in the foyer, and you should submit it to the clerk, Ms. Norma Dugas, seated to my left in the middle. Prior to the call of the agenda item, it is important to fill in the blue form completely and note the specific agenda item number about which you wish to speak. If the card is not completely filled out and is not legible to the clerk, you will not be given the opportunity to speak. If you have any materials you wish to submit, please give those to Ms. Norma Dugas along with your blue form. In an effort to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard, the 5-minute rule will be in effect. Speakers shall refrain from debating, personal attacks, and from confrontational or derogatory comments. I'm requesting that the first row to my left be used for media only. Lastly, food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium, and all pages and phones shall be silenced from this point forward. Our meeting's procedures are by resolution number R001-2008 and not by Robert's Rules of Order. I have no indications of any amendments to be offered for any of the agenda items. Are there any LPUA announcements that wish to be made at this time? Seeing none, let's move on. Janet, could you read the first ordinance, please?
Way. An ordinance of the Lafayette Public Utilities Authority amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to provide for adjustments of revenue and appropriation estimates.
You need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Bertrand and a second by Councilman Nakin. Any discussion on this particular item by any members? Any blue cards, Ms. Dugas? Seeing none, could you call for the vote, please, Janet?
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8? The motion is approved.
So read the next ordinance, please.
Ordinance 4-2012 LPUA, an ordinance of the Lafayette Public Utilities Authority amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to adjust amounts for risk management uninsured loss reimbursements to actual.
Okay, need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Nakin, second by Councilman Boudreaux. Any discussion on this particular item? Okay, seeing none. Blue cards, Ms. Dugas. Janet, call for the roll, please.
District 4?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8? District 3?
Yes.
The motion is approved.
Good. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Can't move these meetings along fast.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Councilman Andy Nakin will lead us in prayer. Councilman Keith Potan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
We, the members of the Lafayette Consolidated Council, having been chosen to represent the people of this locality, beg of thee, Almighty God, to enlighten our minds so that our work will be just and fair in all things. Give us the courage and strength to fulfill our duties according to the laws of the land, and in so doing fulfilling also thy holy will on earth and in heaven through Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We welcome you to the City Parish Council meeting. We, as your representatives in the Lafayette Consolidated Government, welcome your involvement and encourage your participation. This meeting is a public hearing. If you wish to address the council on any item on this agenda, please fill out a blue Request to Address the Council form noting the agenda item number. The blue form is available to you in the foyer, and you should submit it to the council clerk, Ms. Norma Dugai, seated to my left. It is important to fill in the blue form completely and note the specific agenda item number about which you wish to speak. If the card is not completed, filled out, and it is not legible to the clerk, you will not be given the opportunity to speak. This meeting agenda includes comments from the public. Please note that this section is reserved only for items not included as agenda items. If you have any materials you wish to submit to the council, please give them to Ms. Dugai along with your blue form. In an effort to allow everyone an opportunity to be heard, the 5-minute rule will be in effect. Speakers shall refrain from debating, personal attacks, and from making confrontational or derogatory comments. I am requesting that the first row to my left be used for media only. Lastly, food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium, and all pagers and phones shall be silenced from this point forward. Meeting procedures are by resolution, not by Robert's Rules of Order. Agenda item number 5 regarding the Mahaparet Center will be deferred until a later date at the request of Councilman Boudreaux. Agenda item number 9 will have amendments offered to the ordinance and to the Cajun Dome contract. I have received no indication that any introductory ordinances are to be pulled for discussion and separate vote from the in globo list. Announcements. Councilman Kevin Nakian will be absent tonight. We wish Kevin's father well as he goes through surgery. Comprehensive plan update. As a follow-up to the downtown open house that occurred on August 14th, there is still an opportunity to comment on the strengths and opportunities for downtown. Go to www.lafayette.gov and click Comprehensive Plan in the bottom right-hand corner. On the left-hand side, there's a link in the upcoming events to fill in the downtown survey. The deadline for comments is this Friday, September 21st at 3 p.m. Work continues on the overall comprehensive plan. The consultants are compiling data and issues that will lay the foundation for the next community forum series in November. If you have any questions, please contact Kathy Gilbert at 291-8454. We will now move to council announcements. Councilman Bertrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to call on Public Works Director Tom Carroll to come up. And I've had a number of calls and emails today regarding pickup and after the storm, and Tom is going to address those issues and hopefully clear up some of the confusion for folks.
Hurricane Isaac, or tropical storm, when it reached Lafayette, did very minor damage to Lafayette. However, it did generate quite a few extra loads of debris, branches, leaves, things of that nature. It was such a minor storm, we did not call in our debris collection contract. It just didn't pay to get somebody like that in with tremendous mobilization to do that. It's actually would have been unfair to that contractor. So we're utilizing the services of Allied Waste, who is our normal collection contract hauler, and what they did was started on the Monday routes and They had all of their vehicles working on the Monday routes until they got Monday finished, and then they went to the Tuesday routes. Now, unfortunately, doing the Monday route took 4 days. Doing the Tuesday route took 4 days. They're on the Wednesday route. They haven't collected mine. I'm on a Thursday route. Mine hasn't been collected either yet. But, you know, what we're seeing out there, in general, are relatively minor piles. There's nothing extensive. And, you know, we've asked the citizens and residents of Lafayette and unincorporated area to be patient, and I know it's hard. You know, we're getting complaints like my grass is turning brown, which we understand that, but, you know, in my opinion, we were very blessed in not having the wrath of this hurricane like they did in southeastern Louisiana and Mississippi. So, you know, it's an inconvenience. We apologize, but we beg the patience of the people. Allied has indicated that they expect to be completed with all of the Monday through Friday by the end of this week. And then they're still going to be making rounds as we continue on. You know, some people are using this opportunity to bring considerable amount of debris out. Not only yard waste, we've seen piles, and that was part of the issue. They brought everything under the sun out to the road thinking that they're going to collect storm debris, and we're seeing quite a bit of material out there that is not storm debris. But in the interest of serving the public, and maybe this being a good opportunity to clean up our community, Allied is picking all of that material up, no questions. That's been the edict of this administration. Let's go clean the area up. So that was also part of what delayed them, was the type of debris that was brought to the street. So there again, they've reported to me they expect to be completed with all of the Monday through Friday, the initial Monday through Friday routes this week. And then they're going to continue on. Now, just some of the points that have been brought forth. Allied, their drivers can only drive 60 hours a week. That's DOT regulations. So, you know, they can only do so much. They are trying to do much. They've had their operators, their managers. I've had Bobby Guidry. I've had Greg Schultz. They've been out there with pickup trucks picking up some of this debris. So it's been a combination of things. There again, I think part of the big problem was everybody brought everything under the sun. I've seen toys, I've seen mattresses and everything else in these piles. It wasn't just storm debris. But we are taking that extra step to pick that up. So that's where we are. There again, we appreciate and ask the patience of the residents, and this will get done.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like at this time, if any other council members have any questions or comments for Mr. Carroll.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I don't see any, though.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Tom.
We will now move to the Executive President's Report. I'd like to recognize Mr. Joey Durrell and his representative for the President's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durrell is off tonight on company business. One item to wish my childhood friend Lee Bressler a happy birthday. This past Saturday, he is significantly older than I am.
Thank you, sir.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. We'll now move to comments from the public section of our meeting. This portion of our meeting is an opportunity to make your voice heard before the council, the administration, and the public. This is the time to speak about topics that are not included as agenda items. As I noted earlier, requests to make comments specific to an agenda item should be made prior to the call for that agenda item by completing a blue request to address the council form. We request that all matters regarding specific city parish employees be directed to the administration and that it not be addressed at this public forum. We as a council have a concern for the privacy and protection of government employees. With that said, however, if your concern is not resolved in either an expeditious or satisfactory fashion, there are other avenues which can be pursued, and we ask that you follow up with the council office. Confrontational statements and/or threats will not be tolerated. We ask that you conduct yourself in a civil manner and with the same courtesy that you would expect from others. The 5-minute rule will be in effect. Ms. Dugai, first speaker.
I got to stop turning my card in first. I want to try to wait a little. But thank you again very much for having this opportunity to come and speak publicly to the public, I hope, and to the people watching, and to our councilman and CEO. What I have tonight is not on the agenda, but it's been passed. It's speaking to the public about the millages. I still got a pet peeve about the millages. I talked to the tax assessor. He tells me he's not the one that increases the taxes. All he does is set the value, says value. When you vote to roll the millage forward, you increase the taxes. So whether you believe it or not, as a councilman, you did vote to increase taxes because the assessed millage went up. But that's the millage part. What I want to get across to the public is October the 23rd and October the 30th is early voting days. They need to go and vote, and I am requesting that they vote against all millages that are on the ballots, because that is our day to express our voice and our vote against the millages. Now, not to say I don't like some millages. I'm just saying the only way we're going to get the message to the elected officials is to do what Mr. Boudreau said, is vote. We voted on these. We need to vote. November the 6th is election day. Vote then. Vote early. Vote often. But vote and make those millages come back to you, to the public, and express detail how they're going to be spent, how they're going to be used, and what they're about. I think it's too long that we've been approving millages that passed in 1940, and we're still approving them today. So I think it's time for the public to stand up and look at that real hard. That is why I came today, because I want to get the message. October the 23rd through the 30th is early voting days, okay? Go vote. On November the 6th, go vote. Please, and consider this. Vote against the millages to make them come back to you as a public body, and so you have the right to make them focus exactly on what they want to spend it for. No gray areas, no nothing. That way you'll know when you vote on that tax, it's going to be a tax that you approve. And I do approve some taxes, but I just want you to know, I think we need to send the message back. That's our stand. That's the way we send it back to you. We vote against things, we kill it, and we make it come back to you and to us so we can approve those things. I had something on the city parish drainage, but since Mr. Kevin's not in, I'm going to wait till he's back because it pertains to drainage part that he has. And I'm going to bring that up at the next meeting when y'all discussing some drainage. But that's all I have right now on the public comment part. But I do have a few other statements, but it pertains to the agenda. And I'll wait for that time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilman Boudreau.
Could you add Lori, please? Lori, as it relates to taxes, and, you know, we in a national election now, and there's a lot of talk about taxes, who raise them, who don't raise them, what we do with them. If we was to roll millages forward, and a person's property is assessed at the exact value that it was assessed previously, what happens with their tax?
If there's no change in the millage rate,
Right.
the millage rate stays the same, and the assessed value of their house
Remains
stays
the
the same,
Yes.
and their taxes stay the same.
Stay the same. So there will be, at that point, there's no raising of a tax. The only way that a tax could be raised is if we increase the millage rate or if the value of the property go up.
Correct.
And we did not increase rates. We
Correct.
rolled forward.
We
But-
decreased them.
Right, we decreased, but people's property value went up, which showed an increase. I got mine, I got a small little piece of property, and mine stayed the same.
Yeah.
So
And
I
some
can't say
went
that my
down.
taxes were
Yeah.
raised. I wish it would have gone up because I got a potential sale for it. So I wish I could use that as an argument point. But, Mr. President, we're gonna agree to disagree on this one. And the tax assessor is going to say we raised the taxes, and some people say he raised the taxes. But I want people to be clear, because the worst thing that could happen is when bad information go out. And if this is an educational lesson that people need to have at another venue, maybe so. But I'm not going to sit here and let somebody say that I raised taxes if I didn't do that. What I did, I rolled forward millages that have been approved by the vote of the people previously, okay? Now, if their property value has risen, I would think they would be appreciative of that, especially when it comes to the sale of their property or when they're trying to do appraisals or borrow money against it. I'm sure they want the highest number they could get, okay? But when it's time to pay on it, we want the lowest number we could get. But I just want to make sure that the people understand. We decreased millage rates. We rolled forward. Some people's taxes were increased only because their value of their property is increased based on an assessment. That's all that happened. Now, if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong so I could correct myself. I'm right?
You're right.
I'm normally right, so, you know, and I'm right again. So I just wanted to make sure we understood that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Dugas, next speaker, please.
Hi. Tonight I want to talk about a couple of things in my 5 minutes. Miss Norma, did you have a chance to pass those out right now? Thank you, Miss Norma. In the meantime, real quick while you guys are receiving those, let's talk about smart meters. I want to know if there's any follow-up on that issue. I had requested possibly inserts for Acadiana and surrounding areas. Has anyone followed up with Mr. Yuval? I plan on talking to him very, very soon next week when I'm not so busy. But about that, is there any news on that?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay, good. But I'll take care of that on my end. Also, yeah, what about a busing system for the smart meters? Has that been implemented to get people, geriatric and handicapped people, maybe, if they want to opt out of these things? Has anything taken place as far as that goes? Okay, okay. Now, what you guys have just received, I found doing some research. And it's this. I want to know why Northside's getting this. And my heart hurts so bad because I've worked on that side of town, folks. This is not for our babies. There's grandmothers on Gilman. The way this article is written, the words, they call our people on the north side nuisance and targets. And it's extremely disturbing because, and also I feel, in my opinion, that it's an insult on our police officers because a simple drive-by, they can handle it. Granted, there's crime. Yes, I understand this. But this is not for our babies. Because this thing, they leave it on all night, and it records families. What if the little daughter wants to get up and go have coffee on the porch with grandma? I've had people in Country Acres as clients. I mean, this is not acceptable. I have a question about these things. The article says that that somebody was coming, a technical team was coming to fix this thing. Where were they coming from? Does anybody know? Yeah. This might be news to y'all because it took me a long time to find it. It was there on a picture page. And I was like, this isn't happening to our babies. This is a wheeled tank. I wanted to know if federal money has contributed to these things, these surveillance tanks. Who?
No. Ma'am, if you want to issue, give me the chair, or Ms. Dugas, I can get that answered for you. I do not know that answer.
Okay. But I want Acadiana to know that this is not for our babies, and you in your heart know that this is not for our babies. And there's good people on that side of town, and no, our police can handle this, please. Let's call off the tanks for our people. Pretty please. And that's all I have to say. I'm going to just follow up and research. I'm going to go talk to people over there. I'm going to go talk to people over there.
And if you don't mind, you can either email the council and I can get you an answer on if federal monies were donated or given for the Amarillo tank.
Because if this is any part of Homeland, I mean, the Homeland's not for our people. You are for our people. Okay.
Just, if you don't mind, sending an email and I can forward that email and get you that information.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for all your time.
No problem. Thank you. Ms. Dugas, next speaker, please. We'll now move to final ordinances, council. This is a public hearing. Blue sheets are available for anyone wishing to address the council. Janet, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance 194, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to provide for adjustments of revenue and appropriation estimates.
I have a motion by Councilman Bertrand.
Second.
A second by Councilman Potan. Councilman Terrio.
Mrs. Toops, I have a quick question for you. Under our memorandum to the council, it says prior to this revision, the city general fund was budgeted to use $5.4 million in prior year fund balance. The revision reduces that to 2.4 and allows us to increase the emergency reserve for the 2013. This reduction in the use of the prior year fund balance is accomplished by a transfer of the 3.5 from the traffic safety fund, which is i.e. the red flag monies that were in the red flex account were taken from the traffic safety fund and moved to the general fund?
That's the money from the traffic and speed camera, the red light and speed cameras.
Okay, and then I noticed here we took $1 million also from the vehicle maintenance fund, but I think y'all mentioned that was still going to be operational, even though that amount has been taken out.
Right, that was all included in the pro formas and in the budget message and everything that we've been working on the past few months.
Right, I just want to make sure. The projects that were in the traffic safety fund, which you state here, the ones that are still viable have been transferred to the city CIP fund, which means we're making those capital improvement projects now, those that used to be.
Well, they were always capital, we're just paying for them from the city CIP fund instead of the Red Flex fund. And that was all in an effort to increase our emergency reserve and our fund balance. As we noted during the year, that the rating agencies are now setting a lot stricter criteria for our bond rating. And so we want to make sure that we're able to maintain the bond rating that we have. It lowers our future cost of borrowing.
Thank you, Ms. Toops. One other question I have for Mr. Huval, real quick. Mr. Huval, at the very bottom of this revision also, we talk about imputed taxes. You and I had a discussion earlier today, recently, about this. So if you don't mind, can you give the council and the public just a quick overview of what is charged to the LUS customers and what is not in dealing with the imputed taxes and the franchise taxes?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we've discussed this many times. The whole idea of imputed taxes is kind of a foreign term, and I realize that it makes it a little... It makes it important that we let the public know and the council and the LPUA know what that's about. During the deliberations related to the Local Government Fair Competition Act, there was some indication by the private companies that wanted to ensure a level playing field, that if there were taxes that we needed to, that they paid income taxes, state income taxes, federal income taxes, any other fees, that we would impute those tax levels in our rates so that our rates were not artificially low, to not include those taxes. So, for example, if a company was actually paying $1 in their services and their rates had to include $1 to pay a tax, they wanted to make sure that we imputed that $1 within our rates also. And during those discussions, the conclusion was that we would keep those revenues. It would be just a revenue coming to the utility system. The whole idea was that our rates would not be artificially lowered because of not having it. It would be set at a rate that's comparable to what our competitors were having to set it from the standpoint of including those taxes. And so we did that. Once the Public Service Commission rules came out, then the arguments raised by the cable company and the telephone company were that we should also pay those taxes, which was not a provision of the Fair Competition Act. Still, it's not a provision of the Fair Competition Act. It was one of those sticky items, so we, in the end, we offered as a proposal, and the Public Service Commission agreed with that, is that we would go ahead and pay those imputed taxes, which are not, it's not an extra tax being charged on the bill, it's actually imputed in our rates. That we could pay those to the utility system and borrow those funds back, because we indicated to the PSC that our business plan was based on keeping those revenues, and so this having to actually pay those out permanently would create a burden, at least in the early stages of the business. So the agreement was, and what we've been doing every year since that time, is that we calculate what those imputed taxes are, and they are paid to the utility system, and then borrow it back. So in other words, the communication system still has the principal, but it has now an obligation to the utility system. Actually, this turns out to be kind of some free money to the utility system once we actually pay those back to them over a long period of time. So those taxes are different than the taxes that's itemized on our bill. As you and I discussed earlier. For example, we have franchise fees on our bill. We have, I think, a sales tax that's on the bill. Those fees that's itemized on the bill have to be paid out. For example, the franchise fee has to be paid out to the general fund, and it stays there. It's not borrowed back. It's actually a revenue that the general fund has, receives it from the fiber system. And likewise, the sales tax has to be paid the same way. It has to be paid just like that, like a private company would. So while it's all called taxes, it is something different between the imputed taxes, as I described earlier, and the ones that are actually itemized on the bill, which we actually do pay out.
Okay, very good. And I think Ms. Stoops can follow up on this, is basically on the LUS side, you have a revenue and expense of that amount on the imputed and also on the communication side, but there's actually no money exchanged hands.
That's correct. That's correct. No money exchanged.
Okay, and the final question I have on that is that in dealing as to whether LUS would be the one doing the revenue and expense on the line item, the question was that I asked you earlier is who made the decision that LUS would do that, not LCG?
Yeah, as part of the agreement we made with the Public Service Commission, we made that recommendation, and the Public Service Commission accepted that. And the reason why we was through the Public Service Commission is because they were the ones that was implementing the rule requiring us to pay the imputed tax that we previously didn't anticipate having to pay. And when we explained to them that was a necessary revenue for the system, they were agreeable that if we paid it to LUS, then we could borrow it back. If we paid it to the general fund, we would not be able to borrow it back.
So it's an advantage to you at this point to do it through LUS so fiber can borrow it back from LUS?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's all I have. Mr. Yuval, thanks for your time, sir.
Councilman Andy Narcan?
Mr. Yuval, I'm sorry. Out of curiosity, we were talking about the imputed taxes. That's monies that you put into the fees, the revenues, to keep it competitive with the other companies, correct? Basically, keep you in line with them, so you don't have an artificial discount, basically.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Now, those taxes that the other companies collect, what happens to that money? They pay it to whom? Public Service Commission, they pay it to the state? What do they do?
Well, whatever taxes, if it's sales taxes or property taxes or whatever, they would pay those taxes. That's correct.
They pay those taxes, okay. So these imputed taxes you collect, and basically you give them to LUS. Does LUS then distribute them to other people, the same as the other companies do, or?
No.
So it just goes back to you?
It goes back to us. But what the difference is that once the imputed tax is actually a lower standard compared to what we're going to be ultimately. When we start generating in lieu of taxes, just like the utility system does, once the in lieu of tax amounts that we bring in are equal to or greater than the imputed taxes, and the imputed tax burden goes away, because we're going to be paying more to the general fund and in lieu of tax payments than we'd be making through imputed taxes. So it's in the early years of the system, when we're still, serving new customers and building up our revenues, that we needed to have this provision to be able to bring the imputed taxes back in. Once we get to the point that we're developing in lieu of tax payments, then we're not only going to be paying in lieu of tax payments to the general fund, but we're also going to be paying the imputed taxes that are due back to LUS.
Okay. So in other words, once you pay LUS and you get this money back, that full amount is considered a loan with interest.
That's correct.
And then you pay LUS back, and then at that time, LUS distributes the money as taxes, or they just keep that money that you pay them back?
LUS, it would be a new revenue source for LUS.
Okay, so those taxes are never, the imputed taxes are never paid as taxes then? It stays within the system?
Yeah, because we're a nonprofit organization, so as a governmental entity, we don't pay taxes. And in fact, that's the whole concept of in lieu of taxes.
Right.
On the utility side, it's in lieu of
Okay.
LUS paying property taxes or sales taxes or any other fees.
So those
That we
imputed...
make these payments to help to keep the local government with a revenue source that they would normally get if a private provider was providing electric services, for
I
example.
understand. So basically, the imputed tax at this time are part of your revenue and your operation fund?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Hubaugh.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other discussion, Ms. Dugai, any blue cards? Janet, please call for the vote.
District 2?
Yes.
4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
The motion is approved. Ordinance 195, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to adjust amounts for risk management uninsured loss reimbursements to actual.
I need a motion and a second from the council. A motion by Councilman Bertrand, second by Councilman Andy Nakhan. Seeing no council discussion, Ms. Dugai, any blue cards?
No.
Janet, please call for the vote.
District 3? District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9? District 2?
Yes.
The motion is approved. Ordinance 196, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette City Parish President to enter into the second intergovernmental contract by and between the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government and the University of Louisiana at Lafayette concerning the control and operation of the Cajun Dome and the administration thereof by the Cajun Dome Commission and the continued existence of the Cajun Dome Commission pursuant to Louisiana Revised Statute 33-1332.
I have a motion by Councilman Bertrand, second by Councilman Andy Nakhan. Councilman Terrio.
Let me do this. I think I'll get Mr. Stanley involved in this discussion. I know he and I have had this before, discussion a couple of times. In dealing with the Cajun Dome, I guess the first question I have, Mr. Stanley, is who owns the Cajun Dome at this point?
State of Louisiana. And at this point, I don't think that's going to change.
Okay. Which basically is, it's UL, am I correct?
I think the state of Louisiana owns it. I wouldn't know. You may want to ask them whether it's the university or it's titled in the name of the university. I've just always known it as being owned by the state. Mike, would you know if it's owned by you? Yeah. Just
So
state
the ownership is under the state of Louisiana?
I believe that to be correct.
Okay. With the funding that we have here going to the Cajun Dome, and I briefly remember something, does some of those monies that we're using for O&M go also to the convention center?
No.
I guess off the top of my head, Mr. Stanley, where does the convention center get their funding from?
I believe hotel, motel taxes and rentals on the facility.
Okay, so no money goes to the convention center.
Again, you have Mr. Davis here who may be able to clarify that, but
By all means, if Mr.
if I'm
Stanley,
incorrect, Greg, just wave or shout or whatever. Jump up and down.
Good evening, Greg Davis, Director of the Cajun Dome.
thank you, Mr. Davis.
The $500,000 goes into the overall operating budget of the Cajun Dome, and when we say the Cajun Dome, we mean the arena and the convention center. And both of these entities, these facilities, are operated by the same staff, same management. There is no separate staff that's running either facility. When the convention center was built, that operation was just brought into the existing operation under the Cajun Dome Commission. So when you subsidize the Cajun Dome,
So actually, we're still subsidizing the Cajun Dome, but partially the convention center?
absolutely, you're helping us pay for the expenses to operate both the arena and the convention center.
Convention Center and Cajun Dome would be funded, I guess, subsidized by this then?
That's correct.
Operations and maintenance?
That's correct.
Okay. In addition, the Convention Center also gets motel, hotel tax with that?
That's correct. And the state of Louisiana rebates is 4% hotel motel tax, and the legislation limits what we can do with the money. We cannot use that money for operations. We can only use it for capital improvements or the repayment of the bonds that were used to build the convention center.
Okay. I'm going to kind of go on the left field here in that currently the Cajun Dome holds different functions for UL, and none really, and not, I guess a few, well, I'm trying to think for LCG, how many functions for LCG does the Cajun Dome hold?
The only time that LCG has asked us to use the facility was when it would host the police jury convention or the Louisiana Municipal Association. Over the past 26 years, that's happened maybe 3 or 4 times. And
so mainly it's being used by UL, and LCG is not taking part into that.
UL is a primary user in the sense that it does its basketball games,
Right.
its convocations, and it might do 1 or 2 other events. But then you have 100+ other kinds of events, including concerts, family shows, and those kinds of things.
Okay. Because what I'm looking at is the allocations between UL and what UL contributes and what LC contributes, of course, dealing with the subsidy. And I know recently, just last week, we went through what's called the cost allocations for LCG and the unincorporated. So a number of people have had questions as to why don't we use the same process for the Cajun Dome? If UL is using it this % of the time, why aren't they funding it for that much? And LCG is basically not using a whole lot, but yet we're still subsidizing it practically 100%. One other thing that I want to mention is that under our initial agreement, and I know Mr. Stanley, you and I talked about this, under the initial Cajun Dome agreement, it basically stated that once the construction bonds were paid from the Cajun Dome, which we know now, we agreed upon that last time we had this discussion, that the subsidies no longer would exist. But Mr. Stanley, your comment was that if the council approves this subsidy and continues to do so, even though the agreement has expired, then that is still, there still is that capability to do so.
There has been ongoing discussion for probably 15 years about the date that the agreement with the operating agreement with the university expired. And that goes back to the original agreement that was confected at the time that the dome was envisioned as the Lafayette Civic Center in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. And what that original agreement basically says, it doesn't say that the subsidy will no longer be provided. It basically says that the operating agreement will expire when the bonds that were paid originally by the state to finance the facility expire. There's been some discussion with the Bond Commission office going back a number of years trying to track down what that date was, because it could be a moving target. And did it envision the original 25-year bonds? If those bonds were refunded and defeased at any time, which the state of Louisiana does quite frequently, when did that happen? Were the Cajun Dome construction bonds part of those bonds that were paid off, and would they have expired at that time? But there was a subsequent agreement to that that set up the operating agreement with the Cajun Dome, which was a 25-year agreement, which was approved by the council, and it went into effect in September. In fact, 25 years ago, maybe even today. It's like the 18th or between now and the 23rd of September. And if you add those dates together, we're on top of the expiration date now. So what this does is it extends the operating agreement from the original 1987 agreement to provide for the continued operations of the dome. Numerous legal counsel for this government have opined over a number of years that when the council approves the operating subsidy for the dome and that money to be spent for the purposes of operating the dome, that relates to the operating agreement envisioned by the ordinance that was adopted in 1987 and that continues into full force in effect today. At any point during the process, regardless of the expiration date, if a council or administration had decided, you know what, we want out of this agreement, there is a termination clause in the agreement, and the easiest way to do it would be for councils to have defunded it at that point. Then the dome wouldn't have to return to the ownership of the university. They currently own it, but there would be no operating agreement that would be in existence. And what makes this a curious agreement, and you and I have talked about it before, is the fact that the citizens of the city of Lafayette financed 1/3 of the construction of that building plus debt service. There has been much discussion about why don't then the citizens of the city of Lafayette own 1/3 of the building. Well, you also own 1/3 of the liability. So when the dome needs an $8 million roof, if we own 1/3 of it, then presumably the state would come to us and say we want 1/3 of $8 million to fix the roof. So there are capital responsibilities and other things. So it is and has been a unique agreement over time. This administration has chosen to recommend to this council, and it has with previous councils, that because this is the Lafayette Civic Center, because there are civic events that are held there beyond LCG's use of the building, specific use. We own the Hyman Center. There are many events that we conduct at the Hyman Center for LCG specific. We own this building. We have an open enrollment for our employees that's happening in the lobby right now. So while there may not be specific use by LCG or its employees or its needs, there is a civic use of this building, which has existed for the past 25 years and continues to exist. Mr. Durrell and this administration have chosen to recommend to this council that we continue to fund this operation and that we extend the operating agreement in a second intergovernmental contract by 5 years between now and the time that it expires. I've asked for an amendment tonight so we can line it up with the end of the budget year, just to tidy it up and once and for all to put an end to these questions. So this agreement, if approved by the council, would expire on October 31st, 5 years from this October 31st. Okay. Assuming and unless the council chose at some subsequent year not to authorize funding to.
You made some good points there, and again, I'm just bringing this information out in that you mentioned that the public in Lafayette, the taxpayers, basically funded 1/3 of the construction bonds. But since that time frame, you and I have again had this discussion, the total cost of the Cajun Dome was somewhere between $52 and $55 million.
62 or 63 million was the final.
Somewhere in there. But the taxpayers of Lafayette, between the 1/3 of the construction bonds and the amounts they've been paying every year, is almost at that point. And we still don't, the taxpayers still don't own a square foot of the Cajun Dome. The second question I have is there another facility?
Would you like to?
At this point? That's not a discussion we've had, but I don't know. Is that something that Lafayette needs to talk about?
We don't recommend that. We certainly don't recommend that, but you brought it up before, and certainly there can be discussions with the state of Louisiana to negotiate a 1/3 interest in the Cajun Dome, although I don't know why we would do that, because again, we would again be negotiating for a 1/3 of a capital responsibility in a 30-year-old building. No offense to Greg or the commission, the building is in phenomenal shape for its age. And we know that by the acts and the events that building secures every year, and it does so because of the quality of the building and because of how well it would be maintained. Lafayette gets a civic center for $100,000 a year in capital and $500,000 a year to pay the utility bill. We're basically paying the utility bill and giving Greg Davis and his commission $100,000, and in return, we have the civic use of what today is probably in excess of a $100 million building. So we recommend it in its present form and think it's a good deal.
Okay. Is there another facility in Lafayette that LCG does not own that we subsidize?
Not that I know of. If there is, somebody would have to remind me. I can't think of one where there's this kind of agreement.
Okay. In the contract, it states because they bring a benefit to the community. I mean, I know many of businesses, Frank's, Stuller, Van Eaton Romero Realtors, everybody, they bring tremendous benefits.
It's interesting that you'd mention that many businesses do that and that you would liken the Cajun Dome to a business, because in many ways it is, based on what it employs and what it does and how it operates, but it's a governmental entity, and we have an intergovernmental agreement, not a cooperative endeavor agreement with another business, so that would be the difference.
Okay. The main reason I'm bringing these questions forward is that for 3 or 4 months now, we've been talking about the need for fire personnel, and that budget-wise, we don't have to do it. In my opinion, these monies can be used to subsidize the fire department personnel. And again, it's a priority in what this council thinks where it should be. You as the administration, Chief Benoit has come before us and told us about the insurance rates. So that is the reasoning behind the questions here tonight.
All excellent questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Councilman Andy Nakhan.
I think my
Thank you. Councilman Bertrand. Hang on 1 second, please. Councilman Bertrand.
I think I'm going to reserve my comments for later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Boudreaux.
Thank you. I got a copy of the clean amendment, the red line amendment. I know that in our budget adoption, we took an action that is in conflict of what the new contract is calling for. Has that been addressed?
Yes, sir. The new contract, as offered to the Cajun Dome Commission, would be within the $500,000 threshold, which is what the council authorized in the budget. We would not be authorized to go beyond that.
Okay. And I think this is going to be a Greg question. Greg, as it relates to revenue, funding mechanisms, subsidies, just everything that the dome kind of takes in, obviously your revenue is based on what type of events you could attract, how much you could sell the dome. Is there any other entity or body that is going to be giving or was asked or proposing to give more than they have been given in previous times? Has there been, seeking monies from anyone else other than this particular increase that was proposed initially?
The hotel motel tax is rebated to the Cajun Dome. Before we get any money, the state requires that the LCVC receive $200,000 of that money. They have chosen for about the past 3 years or so to incent conventions by underwriting some of their costs to choose Lafayette over other markets for their convention business. And when that's done, they essentially will write us a check and underwrite the rent that the convention would normally pay us to come into the market. So that is the only other entity other than Lafayette Consolidated Government and other than the hotel motel tax that comes from the state that is paying the Cajun Dome some funds.
Okay. Right. That's all I have for you, Greg. In the coming forward with the new contract, were there any considerations I didn't see? Was LCG asking for anything greater than what we were already given? I know we talked a little bit about the designated days, that if we had a request for days, if we needed days other than for like municipal association, was there anything else that the government asked for? I know utilities get some advertisement. I remember when they went in with the new sound system and clock, the big screens that I think LCG got some different things going around the arena and whatnot. What else are we receiving, this government, for what we're giving?
Let me answer your question evasively. Yes and no.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to do because, as you know, conventions and the marketability of the dome happens so many years in advance. And this being a 5-year contract, it is difficult to handcuff the commission. As UL carves its dates out and the dates that are mandatory for the facility, it's significant that we leave enough dates for them to keep open to market and to do so for contracts. The Cajun Dome Commission and Greg and his team are always receptive to doing that, if not per agreement, but working with them if we need to do that. But beyond us paying the utility bill, which is what this subsidy does, there's no advertising component there. Mr. Shelvin put on the table, I think, the sponsorship of one of the local telecos. We're certainly definitely interested in that once that contract expires, but that would be more of an LUS discussion with the Dome or an LUS fiber discussion with the Dome relative to sponsorship, and that would come sometime later. But the agreement basically looks exactly like it has for the past 2 decades, with this government paying the utility bill on its
And actually, I was referencing things beyond dates.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Greg did a good job of explaining the idea of meeting dates.
Sponsorship would be one of them.
Yeah,
Image would be one of them,
if we were receiving anything greater than what we already had for our contribution. That's what I was curious about.
So I was evasive, so the answer would be no.
Thank you.
You're
But
welcome.
You're good at that.
No problem.
You're good, yeah.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We will have a substitute to the revised ordinance, and when we get there, I will need a motion in a second, and I'll have Mr. Hebert explain what that is, and we're also going to have an amendment to Section 2, and when we get to that portion, I'll have Mr. Hebert explain that. I still have some people with some discussion on the board, so I will take them. Councilman Bertrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond to a comment I heard during the discussion between Mr. Terrio and Mr. Stanley. I think it's evident from the discussion that was had tonight that it's an erroneous statement to say that we subsidize 100% of the Dome's operations, and that comment was the comment that I wanted to address. We've heard where the Cajun Dome's monies come from. We've also heard what contribution is made in the form of a subsidy from LCG comes from, but that's not 100%. So I just wanted to clear that up. You know, every year we have this discussion, and we have had it for 5 years. What I would like to hear in the discussion in a 5-year plan, if it is the council's wish not to fund the subsidy, is to do the research and come back with a suggestion of what we can do to satisfy the council in the form of ownership or in the form of seeing to it that the Cajun Dome is as successful as we can possibly make it, and how we put them in a position to not need a subsidy or our help. That's the type of discussion I would like to hear throughout the year, rather than whether or not it's an asset that is important to the community, because it is. It's one of the things that makes our community great. It's one of the things that gives us the quality of life that other communities don't have in our region. And, you know, when we start talking about subsidizing things, you know, I guess I could take issue with some other areas of the budget. For instance, the $6 million that goes to recreation, when the city of Lafayette is the only one that pays a tax for recreation. I mean, we could go through and we could henpeck all the way through, and we could eliminate services, we could eliminate things that make the quality of life of Lafayette what they are. That would be no more prudent than cutting off an arm or a leg. I think it's important that if we're going to continue to look at these things and whether or not we want to support them, then we need to take a holistic look at what we're doing from a budgetary standpoint each year, and not pick out one or two items in the budget that we target to have that discussion. So with that, I will close by simply saying it is not 100% subsidy. The Cajun Dome is, and I'll also say, and I think Mr. Stanley can back me up on this, there have been many years when the subsidy wasn't taken.
Not many, but one, a couple. It got close during the time of the ice gator popularity, where the dome was actually in the black for a year, and did squeeze the number down below the $500,000 subsidy, certainly. One other thing to look at is the value of the dollar. The dome began receiving a $500,000 subsidy up to 25 years ago. That certainly in 1985 dollars would be significantly higher subsidy than in 2012 dollars. So the dollars that the Dome and the Commission are subsidized for operation have certainly not kept up with what's happened to the dollar and what the dollar buys, especially from a utility standpoint, certainly a capital standpoint, but the other expenses that the Dome has faced have far outstripped the value of what the subsidy would be over the course of that 25-year period.
And that's also an operational subsidy that is not just the Dome now, but it's also the Convention Center. So, we need to be realistic when we talk about this and what this all means to our community. And I certainly am always willing to hear ideas for another funding source or what we can do to make the Cajun Dome even more viable than it is today in our community. But I think we've cleared that up, and I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Stanley, what was the thought process from the administration to add an additional $50,000?
If you remember, the discussion ensued really in what we called the new normal after the hurricanes, where we came back and the subsidy that year hit the highest it had ever been, which was $750,000. The Dome lost LAGCO during that year and lost some other major events. And at that time, and since that time, the Dome and the Commission have been trying to get their arms around the expenses. One of them was what we just talked about, and that is the value of the dollar and the fact that it has not changed. We also discussed the timing that Mr. Shelvin brought up during the course of budget hearings, that may be so, but this isn't a good time, especially with what we've looked at relative to the other departments. And I think the Cajun Dome Commission understands that and appreciates that. Dr. Azar is here, President Savoy is here, should you need any comments from them. So one of the things that we looked at was CPI, and to try to adjust it for inflation and for the value of the dollar. We just really weren't able to get our arms around that. So our thought was, let's tie it to the utility bill. We have a pretty good idea of what the deficit and the subsidy has been, and we bumped it 10% at a time that, as it turned out in the council's eyes, ended up not being a good time to recommend that.
Okay. And I guess as we're cutting positions, we're doing this the most tightest budget and all that. I just wanted to know why the extra $50,000. So it was because of losing events to help them out?
Well, and the Dome has done so as well. Let me point that out. They have made cuts as well. It wasn't a question of helping them out. I don't think that the 550, we'll have to get the number, but the last I looked, the 550 did not cover utilities. The utility bill has been running in the $600,000 range, so we saw it as paying ourselves, or at least paying the utility, because a portion of that comes back to ILOT. It was an attempt to get it north of where it has been previously, because they've been needing the money based on the budget that they've submitted to you guys. But Mr. Davis, since the council's action last week, has communicated with the commission. They are certainly going to operate within their budget as they do every year, and they've made some hard decisions, just as this government has.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Councilman Terrio.
Mr. Stanley, just to follow up, I think Mr. Bertrand was mentioning or said that I had mentioned that we subsidize them 100%. I wasn't stating that we subsidize the Cajun Dome 100%.
You don't owe me an explanation.
Earlier,
don't drag me into that fight.
Yeah, no, but what I want to do is get you involved. Mr. Bertrand, what we're talking about is that the total cost of the Cajun Dome is that at this point, with the contributions over the years since 1980-something, that we've almost paid that amount. Now, the final question I have for you, Mr. Stanley, which is why I brought you in, is that without this current subsidy, would the Cajun Dome be able to operate?
That's a good question. I'm not comfortable answering that because I'm not the director of the Dome. I'd like to have Mr. Davis weigh in on that.
I'll ask you the same thing. Over the years, we've had subsidies from when you started anywhere from, way down in the $200,000 range up to the $750,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
Without those subsidies, over the years, would the Cajun Dome be in an operational mode right now? I'm not talking, it doesn't make a profit, but would it be in an operational mode?
Yes, the Cajun Dome will be and would be in an operational mode.
As a basketball arena.
The attempt is always to balance the need for the Cajun Dome to fulfill a civic need,
Right.
Enhancing the quality of life for residents in the Acadiana area, and to also be an economic development engine by bringing in conventions and having economic impact in the community. We've always been challenged with trying to balance that with the need to also be profit-driven. And by that I mean there are some events that make substantial profits, more so than other events. But it's all about dates. Most of our business is done from October through May. And when you run out of dates, you might get a call for a major tour, and you may not have the available date to book that business. And when you don't book that business, you're losing some substantial revenue. So if it was more profit-making and profit-driven, you would not clog up the calendar with events that don't make a lot of money. But at the same time, if you did that, then you would not be fulfilling a civic responsibility. And when I say civic responsibility, we have nonprofit groups that use our facility for their events. We have the Mardi Gras cruise and high school graduations and those kinds of things, Top 28, and also the desire to bring about economic impact by booking conventions. So if we did not have the $500,000 operating subsidy, the Cajun Dome would not close. We would still operate, but there would be a major focus on profit-making and less of a focus on civic activities and economic development and those kinds of things.
There would be different functions that the Cajun Dome would be able to operate under, like I think Mr. Stanley mentioned, it would be, basketball and a number of other things that would be limited in those capacities. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Hey, Mr. Terry, that's an excellent point, because that is one thing that has separated the building from others that are anywhere like it. At the time that the Dome was built, the LSU Assembly Center was the building, as the Centralplex, as it was called then. The River Center now was underway in Baton Rouge and being seasoned in Baton Rouge. The Gulf Coast Coliseum in Biloxi, the Mobile Civic Center were really competitive with the Dome at the time that the Dome was built. And of course, since then, the 19,000 or so seat New Orleans Arena, and a big market city that offers what big markets offer in New Orleans, has come online also to compete with the Dome. As the Dome staff recruits for the #1 acts and tour groups, they get calls from the management of those arenas wanting to know how we do it. Part of the reason, unquestionably, is because of the relationship that Pam DeVille and Greg Davis and the commission have with those promoters over a 30-year period. But those promoters can take those acts anywhere, especially to a 19,000-seat arena that they can sell out. The reason they come here is because of that facility. It is still a remarkable building, in remarkable shape, and this model, while curious and deserving of question each year when it comes to funding and we compare priorities, is a model that works. And something that flows through that is our relationship with our university, which is our #1 utility customer. LUS's #1 customer. When UL does well, Lafayette does well. When Lafayette does well, we hope that UL does well. This is a model that has worked. It's not perfect, but it's one that's worked for 25 years, and it needs to stay in place.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, we agree that UL is very important to Lafayette, absolutely. Questions in the past have been that basically the Cajun Dome only functions basically with the basketball side, but UL football's a great thing here in Lafayette. And Cajun Field in itself generates tremendous amounts of revenue, but yet we don't subsidize Cajun Field.
We're not giving them a subsidy
Yeah, but
for that.
see,
They're doing okay. Coach Hud's doing okay with it.
Yeah, I got you. That's what I'm saying. They're doing great.
The difference, though, with the Cajun Dome is, 25 years ago, the university could have chosen to have the Cajun Dome be what the Pete Mack Assembly Center is to the LSU Athletic Department. They do not have a concern for this economic development impact in the broader community, enhancing the entertainment quality of life, and they have no civic responsibility in the operation of that facility. Our university chose to use this very important asset, which has a market value today of about $230 million, for something far more broader than just being a UL basketball facility. And that is the difference. And when you make that choice, you're going to have to provide some sort of an operating subsidy.
Right.
One big example would be the convention center. Entrepreneurs don't build convention centers because they don't give you a return on investment on your P&L statement. That economic impact shows up in the broader community. So it is a loss leader, and to the extent that you're doing those kinds of civic things, economic development things, there has to be some sort of an operating subsidy.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
That's all I have, sir.
Councilman Shelvin?
Greg? Received an email that kind of disclosed the sponsorship breakdown package that Cox gives to the university. Also saw where it says that the Cajun Dome pays $6,100 a year in cable services.
That's correct.
What about phone and internet?
Our phone is with AT&T.
Any idea how much that one is?
I do not know.
And who's your internet services with?
Internet services? That's through Cox.
Okay. And that's only $500 a month?
The total payment to Cox on a monthly basis is $6,100 per year. And for that amount of money, we get all of the services, cable services, internet services from Cox Communications.
So
And in
cable,
addition to that, they pay us the sponsorship fee.
all right. So cable and internet is $500 a month. That's that's roughly about
right.
$6,100 a year.
Yeah,
For the Cajun Dome,
that's correct.
it's pretty cheap.
Well, you have to remember, they are also a major advertiser, and they wanted to be in the facility as a major advertiser, and so when
So they discount the bill.
Yes, indeed. And they also pay us cash money to be in the facility and to be attached to some of our major event activities, such as the Cajun Heartland State Fair.
Right, but they also receive a value for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because every time you hear it on the radio,
Yes, indeed.
This artist is performing on the Cox stage.
That's right.
So that's,
Absolutely.
there's a value for that, for the money that they're spending. It's not like they're writing a $600,000 check and not receiving anything.
No. They get value for their
Right.
money, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. How many suites does the Cajun Dome have?
We have about 22 suites. One of them is used as a control room for the technology. So we have about 21 suites.
Okay. All of them rented out?
No, we choose not to rent all of them out on a permanent basis. About 75% are rented out on a permanent basis. We purposely hold back about 25% because we have lots of people calling to want to rent on a per-event basis.
Does the Cajun Dome use any one of them for hospitality, suite, or anything like that?
Our Cajun Dome Commission will use a suite for hospitality, and it's not all the time, but they do have that option. And
At
they
its
do use it.
discretion?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. You also mentioned that nonprofit organizations and Mardi Gras use the Cajun Dome for free?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
No, they pay a rent.
Oh, they do pay?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the hotel motel tax, is that the correct enunciation? Or
Yes, hotel motel
Hotel
tax.
motel tax. And is that the revenue that the Cajun Dome receives from that tax? Is it typically the same amount of money every year, or it fluctuates?
Fluctuates. After Hurricane Katrina, it went down a bit, then came back up, and then we had the economic recession, 2008, 2009, went way back down, and now it's working its way back up.
Now, people that that frequent hotels, and is it also car rental?
No, it's not car rental.
Not car rental, it's just hotels.
That's correct.
How much is that?
The total tax that's collected is roughly 2.2 million about right now. It has gone as high as about 2.5. It's been much lower than that.
And that's just the parish of Lafayette's portion?
That's correct.
Okay. How much did the Cajun Dome receive this past fiscal budget year from the state, from the hotel motel tax?
That number was around $2.2 million.
So the Cajun Dome received all of it?
Yeah, what happens is we receive the money, and then the state will give the LCVC $200,000. Our portion is around 2.2, and then we have to pay the approximately $1 million bond payment. So that means you have about 1.2 of excess remaining, and then the state allows us to keep that money for repair and maintenance of the two facilities.
Are those funds dedicated to the Cajun Dome?
Yes, but they can, on a year-by-year basis, yes, it's not necessarily permanent, but they are dedicated to the Cajun Dome, that's correct.
You just lost me when you said not necessarily permanent, but are dedicated.
Well, I mean, the state legislature, if it wanted to.
They can redirect the funds if they want?
If they wanted to, yeah.
Okay, so it's not dedicated? Because when
that's why I said it's on a year-to-year basis, I would imagine. Because they can, if they wanted to, they could.
Because you understand, when I'm thinking of dedicated, I'm thinking of like some of the taxes that we have with this government. A certain amount of the funds are dedicated specifically to maybe public safety, that, it can't be redirected unless you vote on it or something like that. So
in that sense, I would say it's dedicated because the legislature would have to vote to take the money back.
Not the public, the legislature.
That's right.
Legislature, okay. So they can vote to redirect those.
They have that discretion.
Okay. So you guys receive, on an average, about $2 million a year from that tax?
Yeah, and it fluctuates. It's been as low as 1.7. It's been as high as 2.5.
Now, that $1 million bond debt service, that's going to pay for the original bond for building?
For building the convention center.
How long do you have left on that?
2027 is the final payment.
Okay, so another 15 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Those guys back there aren't trying to refinance that to cut it?
Oh, we've already had a refinance. We've done that already.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, we did already, okay.
Yeah.
And it cut it down until 2027?
They brought the interest rate down, and we extended the payout.
Oh, extended the years?
Yeah.
Didn't cut it back?
But they also brought the interest rate down too now, when we did the refinancing.
Okay, so you did the refinancing, paying the same amount of money, but extended the years? No, should be the other way around.
The bond payments, I think, changed, not substantially, but the bottom line is we were able to extend the maturity to 2027, and the interest rate went down.
What was it before?
Man, boy, I can get that to you. I can't recall right now.
Jerry, you know Jerry? Okay. Lee? No. D? No, but my point is that if we refinanced it and the interest rate went down and you're paying the same amount of money, why would we extend it out?
No, the annual payment was affected.
Oh, okay, so
I'm not prepared to tell you exactly what the numbers are, but the annual payment was affected.
So obviously it was more than $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you were telling me that the interest rate went down and you were paying the same amount of money prior and you extended it out.
I'm sorry for confusing that answer.
Okay. That's That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll now recognize legal counsel, Mr. Mike Hebert. I'm going to need a motion and a second to substitute the revised ordinance, and I'm going to have Mr. Hebert speak about what we are revising first, and then from the council, after Mr. Hebert, if so chooses, a motion and a second. Mr. Hebert.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, the substitute ordinance and contract in front of you has a couple of final tweaks to the contract, most notably consisting of a couple of adjustments to the insurance section. There are a couple of months that were changed in some of the basketball schedules, moving 1 month forward or backward just to accommodate the basketball schedules, and a couple of small tweaks to the whereas clauses. And so it would be appropriate to substitute that revised ordinance and contract for the one that's in your packet. I can stop there or talk about the other amendments that would be necessary after that.
Okay. Councilman Shelvin.
Thank you. Can you add Mr. Hebert, please? I got a technical.
He's at it.
Technical question. Mike, on page 5
Of the
contract.
proposed revision or it's probably the same. I'll
We have so many.
I'll catch up with
on
In your yellow folder, Brandon.
Huh?
In the yellow folder is the new one.
Yeah, they should be pretty much. Yeah, it's still on page 5. On page 5, Roman numeral 2, where it says, "The City Parish Council of Lafayette shall appoint a commission member. This appointment shall replace the right of the appointment by the Chief Administrative Officer of the City of Lafayette or his designee as provided by the first intergovernmental contract." And then when I look at the top of the page, it still says City Parish CAO/designee.
Yes, sir. If you go back a little bit, this is referring to the terms of the current members and how it says, unless otherwise noted, the staggered terms of the members of the commission appointed under the first intergovernmental contract, which is the one that this is replacing, are to continue and be served on a staggered basis as follows. And then that's the list that you see at the top of the page. And so it includes the CAO's designee, which then is, the way that designee is going to be appointed in this contract is now addressed in this Roman numeral 2.
Right, but the CAO wasn't appointing in the previous contract either, because we were under the previous contract and the council just made an appointment. My question is, why don't we change, why wasn't the verbiage changed where it says City Parish CAO/designee to Lafayette City Parish Council appointment?
I can't answer that question. I was under the assumption that these appointments were correct, but I
No.
can't answer that question.
He's not making them.
No, it's not. There was an amendment, I think, and a change in between. I think that was the appointing authority in the original contract as envisioned, and previous councils changed that some time ago. I suspect that was captured at the time that the original agreement was grabbed by legal to change it here. So whatever language you want to change it to, Mike, I think that's more important than what it changes it from. Because it ensures that the council, that the appointing structure is as it is now.
I agree. And
Right, because, if you just look at it for face value, it looks like
the CAO has an appointment there.
Yes.
Currently.
That was the case, but has not been for some time.
Right, he doesn't. We don't want him to get any phone calls whenever appointment
Understood.
time comes up.
Understood. So that can be an appropriate amendment that can be added to the list of amendments.
Yes, I'd like to make that amendment that it changes from City Parish CAO/designee to
Parish Council.
Lafayette City Parish Council appointment or designee, however.
Okay, we're on page 5, and Councilman Shelvin has made an amendment to that to where it says City Parish CAO/designee. We will now go to City Parish Council. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do we have a second? A second by Councilman Andy Nakam.
Yes.
Is that it, Mr. Shelvin?
Yes, sir, that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Bertrand?
My question was answered, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on this amendment by Councilman Shelvin? Any blue cards, Ms. Dugas? I'm going to do one for each one, so I'm just going to ask.
Bill Brasso.
Mr. Brasso, would you like to speak on this particular, on Mr. Shelvin's only? Okay, thank you. Councilman Shelvin.
Mike, I got one more question. Ask my fellow councilman Max a question. The appointments as they are now, was that set by state legislation, or could we
No, sir.
change?
They were not set by state legislation.
Oh, so if the council wanted to, they can take some appointments away? And add
As long
some?
as it's agreed in the contract
In the
by both
contract.
parties.
Oh, by both, okay. Okay, all right, thank you. All right.
And please call for the vote on Councilman Shelvin's amendment.
District 5?
Yes?
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
Still, sorry.
The amendment is approved.
We'll now move to a motion and a second on the substitute of the revised ordinance that Mr. Hebert stated earlier in reference to changing the dates. I have a motion. Mr. Hebert, am I doing this correctly?
The appropriate motion would be to now adopt the substitute contract and ordinance as amended by Mr. Shelvin's amendment.
That motion is made by Councilman Bertrand, a second by Councilman Boudreaux. Do we have any blue cards or anyone wishing to speak on this particular item?
Yes, Mr. Brasso does.
Mr. Brasso, would you like to speak? The final? Okay, just a second, not there yet. Janet, please call for the vote.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
Motion to amend is approved.
Okay, Mr. Hebert, we also have a motion and I will need a motion and a second to the amendment of Section 2. Will you please discuss Section 2?
Yes,
Amendments.
and there's actually one more that I'll discuss in a minute. Section 2 of the ordinance and Section 16 of the contract. The amount of the subsidy in both locations is currently specified as $550,000. And as you know, in your budget ordinance, you reduced that to $500,000, so it would be appropriate, therefore, to make that amendment to change that number in both of those locations.
I have a motion by Councilman Boudreaux to make those changes. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Terrio. Seeing no council discussion, does anyone from the public wish to speak on this particular amendment? Seeing none, Janet, please call for the vote.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
Motion to amend is approved.
Mr. Hebert?
One more, Mr. Chairman. Section 22, the effective date is blank. That effective date should be filled in with September 23rd, 2012. There's also a blank after that, which says how many weeks on top of 5 years. That makes the contract to extend out to October 31st of 2017. I didn't compute that, but we'll compute that if you just put in the amendment that the effective date will be September 23rd of 2012. We'll handle the rest.
I need a motion by the council to accept that amendment for the date. I have a motion by Councilman Boudreaux, a second by Councilman Andy Nakhan. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this particular amendment on the date?
22.
Janet, please call for the vote.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
The amendment is approved.
Okay, Mr. Hebert, follow me on this, but I'll need a motion and a second to vote on all these substituted ordinances
On the ordinance as amended.
As amended.
The ordinance and contract as amended.
I need a
And that would be the
motion.
point at which Mr. Brasso, if he wished to speak, would be appropriate for him to
I need a motion and a second.
Did we have a motion and a
I'm
second?
getting, yes, ma'am, I have a motion by Councilman Bertrand.
Earlier.
Earlier,
Earlier.
You already have one?
had the substitute.
All right. Ms. Dugani, blue cards.
Dale Brasso.
Mr. Brasso, thank you for patiently waiting through that.
It's about to call for the question.
Jay, appreciate it. I do have some comments on this ordinance and concerns as a taxpayer and a citizen. I was trying to figure why someone didn't maybe make an amendment to this ordinance proposing that we pay the $500,000 a year for 5 years and reduce $100,000 a year to eventually get to zero, because we've always had a problem with this amount coming up. And I would think that it would give time for the Cajun Dome and Greg and them to adjust their financial status and their means of getting enough to operate, and where to release the burden from the taxpayers every year, and maybe use that $500,000 to different things in the city that we need in parish. That was my concern about this ordinance, and I would hope that somebody would maybe make an amendment to that. Propose signing the 5-year contract, and propose reducing it $100,000 a year. And maybe the taxpayers could see that you're trying to eliminate this and eventually get it off. You know, if someone has 20-something years and they've taken $500,000 or more or less, it tells me that as long as you keep giving it, they will use it. So why not set a boundary? Why not set a limit? And why not set something that eventually every economic group that comes to Lafayette or to the state of Louisiana is given an incentive. But it's not to carry them forever. It's to give them that boost, and then sooner or later they're supposed to operate on their own. And I think that's where we're looking at trying to understand what economic development really means. It means we subsidized and we helped and we carried 25, 26 years, whatever it is. And now we want to go another 5 years. Let's do something to get something eliminated eventually. Because I think if you tell people that they won't be getting it, they'll adjust their payment or their set fees to be able to operate their business. And I love the Cajun Dome. Don't get me wrong, I love what they do. I think it's great. But I would do this for anybody, any business that came and asked for a subsidy or anything. I would do the same thing. I would say that we don't mind helping you to start, but you do need to get on your own. And I think 25 years is a pretty good record. So that's my comments, and that's what I had thought about, maybe going with a 5-year plan and reducing it to zero eventually. But that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dugan, any other speakers?
No, sir.
Janet, please call for the vote.
District 9,
This is on the final vote?
This is the final vote.
No.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
District 6.
Yes.
District 7,
Yes.
District 8.
Yes.
The ordinance as amended is approved. Ordinance 197, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by authorizing the increase of revenues in the amount of $250,000 of funds received from the Lafayette Public Trust Financing Authority and appropriating within the Community Development Department for the First-Time Home Buyers Program.
A motion by Councilman Bertrand, second by Councilman Andy Nakkan. Seeing no council discussion, Ms. Dugan, blue cards. Janet, please call for the vote.
District 2? District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
No.
The motion is approved. Ordinance 198, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to provide for adjustments to the manning tables and adjust revenues based on actual collections, return contribution from city and parish general fund, and increase expense line items within the Office of Community Development Department.
I need a motion and a second from the council. I have a motion by Councilman Bertrand. Second by Councilman Andy Nakane. Seeing no council discussion, Ms. Dugai, I need blue cards. Janet, please call for the vote.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2 is absent.
Hold
The
on one
motion is
second.
approved.
Hold on 1 second. Hold up.
Hang on, Janet. Councilman Boudreaux.
Yes. Madam Clerk, on item number 10, I'm going to ask for a point of clarification. The screen showed that the item failed. Could you,
Some may not have voted.
so it showed on the screen, but what was the actual count?
For 10,
Yes, ma'am.
we had 2 absent, 1 no, so we had 6 yeses.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move to the portion announcements of vacancies on boards and commissions. Jan, please read these items.
Item 12, due to a term expiration, a vacancy will exist on the Lafayette Airport Commission for a 4-year term effective October 30, 2012. Individuals wishing to submit a resume for the above volunteer vacancy must be a registered voter and a resident of Lafayette Parish. Item 13, due to a term expiration, a vacancy will exist on the Lafayette Airport Commission for a 4-year term effective October 30th, 2012. Individuals wishing to submit a resume for the above volunteer vacancy must be a registered voter and reside in the unincorporated area of Lafayette Parish. Due to a term expiration, a vacancy will exist on the Acadiana Resource Conservation and Development Commission for a 3-year term effective February 2, 2012. Due to term expirations, 2 vacancies will exist on the Industrial Development Board for a 6-year term effective March 1, 2012. Individuals wishing to submit a resume for the above volunteer vacancies must be a registered voter and a resident of Lafayette Parish. Due to a resignation, a vacancy exists on the Board of Zoning Adjustment, alternate number 1, to serve an unexpired term until January 19, 2014. Individuals wishing to submit their resume for this volunteer position must be a resident and a registered voter of Lafayette Parish and must own property in Lafayette Parish. Act 472 of the 2008 Louisiana Legislative Session, now codified as Louisiana Revised Statute 42-1124-21, requires financial disclosure under certain circumstances. Resumes are to be forwarded to Norma A. Dugas, Clerk of the Council, P.O. Box 4017C, Lafayette, Louisiana, 70502, no later than noon on Tuesday, October 2nd, with council appointments to be made October 16, 2012.
We will now go to appointments by council as a whole to the following boards and commissions. Janet, please read number 17.
We have an appointment to the Lafayette Parish Bayou Vermilion District for a 4-year term effective September 30th, 2012. We received 2 resumes, one from John W. Troutman and one from Derek Paul Landry.
Councilman Castillo.
I'd like to nominate Derek Landry.
Councilman Terrio.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Troutman.
Any other council nominations? Seeing none, Janet, please call for the vote.
District 2,
Landry.
District 3,
Landry.
District 4,
Landry.
District 5,
Landry.
District 6,
Landry.
District 7,
Landry.
District 8,
Landry.
District 9. Mr. Landry is appointed. The second appointment is to the Civil Service Board to fill an unexpired term until February 2, 2016, from nominees provided by the Acadiana Society for Human Resource Management. We have 3 resumes: George Lewis, Ralph Peters, Daniel W. Snow, Jr.
Councilman Terrio.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Lewis.
Councilman Shelvin.
Who place are they taking? We know? No. Who?
Mr. Side.
Zyler? Okay, thank you.
Any other nominations? Seeing none. Ms. Aver, we'll have to go through the vote, even though that's the only nomination.
Well, if there's no, I sometimes question your nomination process, but if you only have one nomination and nobody else makes any nomination without objection, then he would be considered appointed.
Can you please rewrite our nomination process so I can have it for next time? Thank you. Janet, then I'm assuming Mr. Lewis is appointed.
I'd like to make a comment real quick.
Councilman Bertrand, you have the floor.
I just want to recognize that there are 2 other resumes. In all fairness to those who put in a resume, we have Ralph Peters, and we also have Daniel Snow, Jr. And,
Yes, sir. Janet did that earlier, previous.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 19, appointments by council members and or city parish president and or area mayors. Janet, please read number 19.
We have an appointment by the City Parish President of Dr. David Berry to the Lafayette Parish Bayou Vermilion District for a 4-year term effective September 30th, 2012. An appointment by District 6 of Stephanie Allen to the Citizens Advisory Committee to the MPO for a 4-year term effective 9/17/2012. And an appointment by the City Parish President of Thomas Michaud, Ph.D., to the Lafayette Parish Bayou Vermilion District to fill an unexpired term until September 30th, 2013, effective 9/18/2012.
Introductory ordinances, council and LPUA. This is a public hearing. Blue sheets are available for anyone wishing to address the council. The 5-minute rule is in effect. Janet, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance 200-2012, a third supplemental ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council and the Lafayette Public Utilities Authority, amending and supplementing an ordinance, the General Bond Ordinance, adopted on June 29, 2004, to provide for the issuance of not exceeding $200 million principal amount of utilities revenue refunding bonds, Series 2012, of the City of Lafayette, State of Louisiana, the issuer, pursuant to the General Bond Ordinance prescribing the form, fixing the details, and providing for the payment of principal of and interest on such bonds, executing a bond purchase agreement for the purchase of the bonds, and providing for other matters in connection therewith.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the bond attorney, Mr. Lee Bressler, to speak on behalf of this, or Mr. Osborne.
He's combining them.
Of an ordinance that, as I said, would provide for the refunding of $200 million, not exceeding $200 million of bonds to provide for refunding of outstanding utility revenue bonds. And the whole purpose of it is to take advantage of today's low interest rate environment in order to save money. And you've got, Lee Bressler is here if you'd like to have any of the information on it, and the utilities director is here if you have any questions about the issue.
Councilman Shelvin.
Guys, it's up for introduction now, right? And y'all want to make a presentation tonight or for final?
Not really much of a presentation. We kind of went through this before. It's an issue where we can save about $1 million a year if we're able to issue the bonds at the interest rates we have now, and we discussed this previously.
Okay.
So there's nothing,
Well, no,
it's not a new issue for new projects. It's actually for projects we've already have in place today, and just reducing basically the cost of interest associated with that.
When I just saw Lee sitting in the chair and getting ready to wind up and start, he's okay, good.
All right.
Lee always comes prepared.
Okay, then we will now move to recognize the Chair of the LPUA, Councilman Shelvin.
Thank you. Any discussion from the LPUA members? See none. Blue cards.
Motion.
Oh, sorry, need a motion from LPUA members. Motion to accept by Councilman Patton, second by Councilman Bertrand. Any blue cards? None. Janet, please call the vote.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4? District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
I need a motion and a second from the council.
So moved.
Have a,
To take it in Globo?
no, sir. This is for the council.
On the LPUA.
This is for the council.
Second, excuse me.
I have a motion by Councilman Andy Nakane. I have a second by Councilman Don Bertrand. Seeing no further council discussion, Ms. Dugai, any blue cards?
No, sir.
Janet, please call for the vote.
District 4? District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
We will now move to items number 21 through 31 to vote a motion. I need a motion and a second from the council to consider all other introductory ordinances in Globo, including zoning and council only. I have a motion by Mr. Terrio. I have a second. Second by Mr. Andy Nakane. Janet, please read the titles of these ordinances.
Ordinance 201, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by adjusting revenues and expenses within the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Emergency Operations and Security Division, Animal Control Shelter Fund. Ordinance 202, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to sell at public auction surplus vehicles, equipment, and other miscellaneous movable property which are no longer needed for public purposes as per the attached list at an auction. Ordinance 203, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette City Parish President to execute the attached agreement between the United States Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, and the Lafayette Police Department, and amending fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing revenues in the amount of $17,202 received from the DEA and appropriating within the Lafayette Police Department. Ordinance 204, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing salary and benefit appropriations for a vacant building superintendent position in the Public Works Department. Ordinance 205, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette City Parish President to enter into a railroad force account work agreement with BNSF Railway Company for BNSF Railway Company to remove sediment from the existing Walker Road drainage channel in order to improve drainage. Ordinance 206, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by recognizing revenues in the amount of $402,400 received from the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, state transportation projects for communities with population less than 200,000, approving the use of existing funds in the amount of $100,600 for the required local match, project total being $503,000, appropriating within the Traffic and Transportation Department Traffic Services Division, and authorizing the Lafayette City Parish President to execute a contract with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development to implement the pavement marking program for federally aid-eligible non-state routes created by the MPO. Ordinance 207, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council approving an agreement between the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government and the Louisiana Supreme Court Drug Court Office, and amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing revenues in the amount of $579,900 to recognize grant funds, adjust manning tables, and appropriate within the Community Development Department Drug Court Office, and decrease the use of prior year fund balance in the parish general fund. Ordinance 208, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government to provide for adjustments to the salary and benefits of one senior center aide within the Community Development Department. Ordinance 209, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by authorizing the receipt of $167,240 in Louisiana Job Employment Training Program funds, formerly Louisiana Employment Assistance Program, from the Louisiana Workforce Commission, and appropriating the revenues within the Community Development Department, Workforce Development Division, Title 1B budget, and by adjusting salaries and benefits in the WIA Title 1B funds. Ordinance 210, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council amending the fiscal year 11-12 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing revenues in the amount of $49,980 received from the state of Louisiana and appropriating within the Community Development Department. Ordinance 211, 2012, an ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council declaring the building or structure located at 318 West Gilman Road, also known as 320 West Gilman Road, Lafayette, Louisiana, owned by Harry Parker Jr., care of Gerald J. Block, attorney appointed, to be dilapidated and dangerous to the public welfare, and ordering the condemnation of same.
Thank you, Janet. Any blue cards, Ms. Dugas, on any of these introductory ordinances?
First speaker is Dale Grasso.
Something caught my eye. I know it's an introductory ordinance, so I'll just bring it briefly. Number 24, it shows increase in salary and benefits for appropriations for a vacant building superintendent. And I think I answered my own question probably by, you can't hire someone, so you got to increase the salary to get them. But it just caught my eye, and it just concerned me.
Mr. Stanley? This is item number
24.
24 on intro, or Ms. Toops?
Give me one moment.
Sure.
I can't answer it here. Generally, we do not move in that direction unless it's been before the Civil Service Board, or at the very least, a recommendation from the staff there. Mr. Brasser could in fact be right, because as you know, we do have the authority within budgeted amounts to offer up to or up toward the midpoint if it's got civil service approval based on experience or other things on this one. I just don't know the answer, but we'll have it to him by final adoption or in between.
Is that Mr. Brasso? We'll get it to you before final.
Thank you very much.
Dale will probably know before I do. He's going to come down here tomorrow, so.
Thank you. Ms. Dugas, next speaker.
Stephanie Skinner, who wishes to speak on ordinance 202, 203, and 211.
Hi, it's Stephanie Skinner. I'm identifying myself for the record. Can I compile everything in those three and just ask a quick question, because they kind of all go together?
Yes, ma'am. You actually get 5 minutes per ordinance, but if we can do it all in 5.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
no,
with you.
I'll let y'all go home early, sir.
Thank you.
because I like y'all. Thanks for how you helped me. Okay, the first one in the movable property, does anybody know if that's like property that's confiscated from a marijuana bust, or is that old property that the state uses, the stuff that goes up for auction?
On most of these that we do, and you're speaking on item number 31.
Yes,
it
sir.
It is to where it is for the safety and welfare. Sometimes people are living in there doing drugs. Some of them are where there's no roof on the house. Some of them aren't structurally sound. Mr. Randy Viator normally at final will come and show us pictures of these homes.
Yes.
They've tried to contact and this is a public hearing for the people that own this property to come to the final, to either get it safed and up to fire code standards to where it's good for everybody.
Yes,
or
sir.
we do condemn it and we,
But doesn't immovable property, could that mean, so it's immovable, so it doesn't include cars and all that?
that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go on to my next one. In lieu of those tanks that they're serving up our beautiful Northside grandmothers and babies, let's talk about this one right here. An ordinance of the Lafayette, this is number 203, guys. An ordinance of the Lafayette City Parish Council authorizing the Lafayette City Parish President, and that's not y'all, I don't think, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah, that
does
would be
include you guys?
Mr. Durrell, yes, ma'am.
No, but that includes you two on a whole? Or no, just him, right?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. To execute the attached agreement between the United States Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration, and the Lafayette Police Department, and amending, we'll just go on and on, but the DEA. So what kind of agreement is this? I would like to get to the bottom of it. Who do I go to talk to about this?
It'd be Chief Kraft, and give me 1 second. Chief, can you, just very quickly,
How come you guys aren't involved in the signing of this,
ma'am?
how come you
We're
weren't brought in on the loop? How come it's an agreement between?
We're voting on giving the city parish president the authority to do so, so we're
Okay,
granting
so
it.
we haven't done it yet, okay.
That's correct.
Hi, Chief.
Hi, this is an agreement between the Police Department and the Drug Enforcement Administration. We work very closely with that agency.
Yes, sir.
And so, as a result of the amount of overtime that our agents put in with their agents, the DEA reimburses the city for that overtime cost, so that the city does not have to bear those overtime out of our budget. So they compensate us for the overtime that the agent works.
Yes, sir.
And they just do that by, it's an agreed upon amount.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Mr. Chief. Now, the next one is, so the money goes for the overtime. Okay. And the last one, I'm always going to question anything federal that's coming into our community. That's just a part of me. And the last one I have is the ordinance on the little fellow's house. I would like to see that house on Gilman Road, number 211. But we have time on that because it's going up for vote, right? Am I correct in that
Yes,
assumption?
ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other council discussion, Ms. Dugan, any other blue card?
No, sir.
Janet, please call for the vote.
District 2? District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes?
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
Yes.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
Yes.
District 9? Motion to approve introduction in globo is approved.
This meeting's adjourned. I would now like to start the LPPA meeting. This is a public hearing. Blue sheets are available for anyone wishing to address the council. The 5-minute rule will be in effect. The blue cards can be found in the foyer. Janet, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance LPPA 225, a series ordinance of the Lafayette Public Power Authority authorizing the issuance and sale of electric revenue bonds, Series 2012, of the Lafayette Public Power Authority, providing for certain approvals thereof, prescribing the terms and provisions of such bonds, providing for approval of a preliminary official statement in connection with the sale of such bonds, and authorizing the distribution thereof, and providing for other matters in connection therewith.
Have a motion